You disgust me. Life in prison is too good for trash like you. Judge Harrison Whitmore spat the words with pure venom, then threw his head back and laughed, a cruel, triumphant laugh that filled the entire courtroom as he stared down at 17-year-old Lydia Johnson standing in handcuffs. He slammed his gavel hard. Life without parole. Take this garbage out of my sight, he waved dismissively, like shooing away a fly. Two bailiffs exchanged grins. The prosecutor nodded approvingly. In the gallery, Gloria Anderson covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. But Lydia didn't move. Her eyes remained fixed on the judge, calm and steady. Have you ever witnessed pure evil wearing a judge's robe? This black teenager just got life while a racist laughed in her face. But 30 seconds later, one phone call would destroy him forever. He had no idea who he just condemned. 3 weeks earlier, the city had erupted. Protesters filled the steps of City Hall, their voices rising in anger and pain. They were demanding justice for Marcus Williams, a 22-year-old black man shot 7 times during a traffic stop. Unarmed, no criminal record, dead in the street while his girlfriend screamed for help. Lydia Johnson had been there that day. At 17, she was one of the youngest in the crowd, but she stood at the front, a megaphone in her hand. Her voice was clear and strong as she read prepared statistics about police violence in their county. 63% of police shooting victims were black, even though black residents made up only 18% of the population. But that wasn't the story Judge Whitmore wanted to hear. In his courtroom, the prosecution painted a very different picture. According to them, Lydia wasn't a peaceful protester. She was a ringleader, an instigator, a dangerous radical who had incited a violent mob. The prosecutor, Gerald Stevens, stood before the jury with practiced concern on his face. Ladies and gentlemen, what we have here is not a student activist. What we have here is a criminal who weaponized a tragedy to advance her own anarchist agenda. He clicked a remote, and grainy footage appeared on the screen. Body cam video from Officer Ryan Mitchell showed chaos, people running, glass shattering, smoke in the air, and there, frozen in the frame, was Lydia on the steps with her megaphone raised. This, Stevens said, pointing dramatically, is the face of violence masquerading as justice. Judge Whitmore watched with his arms crossed, nodding slowly. His reputation preceded him. They called him Maximum Whitmore behind closed doors. In 8 years on the bench, he had presided over 847 juvenile cases. 771 of those defendants were black. Their average sentence was 7.2 years. The 76 white defendants averaged 1.4 years for the same crimes. Nobody talked about those numbers publicly. But Lydia knew them by heart. Officer Mitchell took the stand, his uniform crisp, his expression somber. He placed his hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Officer Mitchell, Stevens began, can you describe what you witnessed on November 18th? Mitchell nodded. I was assigned to crowd control at City Hall. The protest started peaceful enough, but around 3:40 in the afternoon, things changed. The defendant started shouting into her megaphone. Not statistics anymore. She was yelling, "We need to fight back. We need to make them listen." That's when the violence started. I saw her personally throw a brick through the window of a patrol car at 3:42. The glass shattered, and the crowd surged forward. 3 officers were injured. Stevens entered the evidence. Photos of the shattered police car window, close-ups of the brick, images of injured officers with cuts and bruises. Lydia's public defender, Thomas Reynolds, tried to object. He was overworked, underpaid, juggling 40 cases at once. Your Honor, the defense would like to introduce evidence that contradicts. Judge Whitmore cut him off with a wave. Counselor, if you're going to waste this court's time, I suggest you think very carefully about your next words. Reynolds sat down. This happened 12 times during the trial. 12 times Reynolds tried to speak. 12 times Whitmore shut him down. The message was clear. This defendant didn't deserve a defense. When Reynolds tried to submit Lydia's academic records, her acceptance letters to 3 prestigious universities, her essay on systemic racism that had won a national competition, Whitmore sustained the prosecution's objection without even looking at the documents. "This isn't a scholarship hearing, counselor. We're here to determine guilt for serious criminal charges. The defendant's grades are irrelevant." "But, Your Honor, they speak to her character." "I said irrelevant." Whitmore's eyes narrowed. "Are you having trouble with basic English, Mr. Reynolds? Or do I need to hold you in contempt?" Reynolds sat down again, his face flushed. The courtroom itself reinforced the power imbalance. Judge Whitmore sat elevated on his bench, literally looking down on everyone else. The gallery was segregated in practice, if not in law. White observers sat on the right side, nodding along with the prosecution, some whispering approvingly when Whitmore made his sharp comments. Black families clustered on the left, their faces masks of fear and resignation. When Lydia's turn came to testify, Whitmore barely looked at her. He examined his fingernails as she took the oath, but Lydia's voice remained steady. "Your Honor, members of the jury, I did not throw that brick. I was filming the entire protest on my phone. I have video evidence that shows—" Whitmore interrupted. "Convenient story. Where is this magical footage?" "My phone was confiscated when I was arrested, Your Honor. I've requested its return 11 times through my attorney. Each request has been denied." The judge leaned forward, his smile cold. "Let me guess. This imaginary video prove your innocence?" "It's not imaginary, Your Honor. The video exists. It shows that the brick was thrown by someone 40 feet away from me. I was wearing a blue jacket. The person who threw the brick was wearing red. And yet, Officer Mitchell, a decorated veteran with 12 years of service, swears under oath that he saw you throw it." Whitmore's voice dripped with sarcasm. "But we should believe you, a teenage activist with an obvious agenda, over a sworn officer of the law?" Lydia remained calm. "Your Honor, I'm not asking you to believe me over anyone. I'm asking you to look at the evidence. My phone is in the police evidence locker. The video is backed up to the cloud. All I need is access." "Denied." Whitmore slammed his gavel. "This court will not be manipulated by convenient tales of missing evidence. I tried, Your Honor, 11 times. And I said denied." His face flushed red. "One more outburst and I'll add obstruction to your charges." Lydia touched the ring on her chain. "Yes, Your Honor." But something in her eyes suggested she wasn't afraid. She was waiting. The prosecution rested with a flourish. Stephen stood before the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is overwhelming. The defendant incited violence. She assaulted law enforcement. She shows no remorse. The state asks for the maximum sentence. These young criminals need to learn that actions have consequences." Judge Whitmore nodded throughout the closing argument. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. They came back with guilty verdicts on all charges: inciting violence, assault on a police officer, destruction of property, resisting arrest. Sentencing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. During those 2 weeks, Lydia sat in juvenile detention. She spent her time writing in a legal pad a sympathetic guard had given her. When Gloria visited, she brought small items hidden inside books and crossword puzzles. "Your brother got into the locker," Gloria whispered once. "He accessed your cloud backup. Everything is ready." Lydia nodded. "Good. Tell him to send it to the contact I gave you. It's almost time." Gloria looked terrified. "Baby, are you sure about this?" "Mama Gloria, trust me. I know what I'm doing." And she did. This trial, this judge, this entire nightmare had been exactly what Lydia expected. She had been preparing for this moment for 18 months. Every racist comment, every denied motion, every contemptuous look from Judge Whitmore was being documented. The ring on her chain wasn't just sentimental, it was her mother's wedding ring, yes. But it was also something more, something the judge would discover very soon. On the morning of sentencing, Whitmore entered the courtroom with a spring in his step. He had a golf game scheduled for that afternoon. This would be quick. Life without parole. He had no idea that in less than an hour, his entire world would collapse. The morning Lydia took the stand, the courtroom was packed. Word had spread about Maximum Whitmore's latest case. Some came to watch justice. Others came to watch a spectacle. Lydia walked to the witness box with her head high. The orange jumpsuit hung off her thin frame. The handcuffs clinked as she raised her right hand. "I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth." Judge Whitmore didn't look up. He signed documents, multitasking, as if her testimony was background noise. The disrespect was intentional. Thomas Reynolds stood. "Miss Johnson, tell the court what happened on November 18th. I organized a peaceful demonstration at City Hall to honor Marcus Williams. I obtained permits 3 weeks in advance. Everything was legal." "What was your role during the protest?" "I was a speaker. My job was to present statistical data on police violence. I had a 7-minute speech with verified numbers from public records." Judge Whitmore snorted. Lydia paused, then continued. "At 3:38, I was on the steps reading my notes. I had my phone in my left hand, filming for documentation. My right hand held my speech. I did not have a brick." "When did things turn violent?" "At 3:41, I heard glass breaking. I turned my phone toward the sound. I saw someone in a red hoodie 40 feet away throw a brick at a police car. That person ran into the crowd." "Where were you?" "On the steps, wearing a blue jacket, clearly visible in the video I was recording." Prosecutor Stevens jumped up. "Objection! The defendant references this alleged video, but no evidence exists." Whitmore perked up. "Sustained. Miss Johnson, stop mentioning it." Lydia faced him. "Your Honor, my phone was confiscated at my arrest. It's in the evidence locker at Riverside County Sheriff's Department. I filed 11 requests to review it, all denied." Whitmore's eyes narrowed. "Are you suggesting this court is hiding evidence?" "I'm stating facts. The phone exists. The video exists. It's being withheld." His face reddened. "Counselor Reynolds, control your client." Reynolds stood. "Your Honor, we filed multiple motions requesting the phone. The video is crucial." "Denied. We're not delaying justice for tech games." Lydia continued anyway. "Your Honor, the video proves I didn't throw anything. Officer Mitchell's body cam shows 3:42. But the breaking glass is audible at 3:41. That's a 1-minute discrepancy." The courtroom went silent. Whitmore leaned forward. "Are you a lawyer, Miss Johnson? Did you pass the bar in detention?" "No, Your Honor, but I've studied constitutional law for 3 years. I know my Sixth Amendment rights. I know Brady versus Maryland requires the prosecution to turn over exculpatory evidence." "Enough!" He slammed his gavel. "You are a defendant, not a scholar. Answer questions and nothing more. Understand?" "Yes, Your Honor. I understand perfectly." Something in her tone made him uncomfortable. Reynolds tried again. "Miss Johnson, where did you study law?" "Objection. Relevance?" "Sustained. The defendant's hobbies are irrelevant." Lydia spoke anyway. "I was accepted to Yale Law's pre-college program for 2 years. I completed courses from Harvard and Stanford." "Objection! Someone is coaching her." Whitmore nodded. "Who coached you? Who told you what to say?" "No one, Your Honor. I'm answering truthfully. If my knowledge seems unusual, perhaps that tells you who I am." His jaw tightened. "What you're capable of is manipulating this court with fancy words. I've seen your type. Smart mouth, no common sense." He turned to Reynolds. "Relevant questions, or are we done?" Reynolds glanced at Lydia, who nodded slightly. "Your Honor, we request 48 hours to retrieve the phone evidence." "Denied. We're not delaying a wild goose chase." "We tried 11 times, Your Honor." "And I said no 11 times." Reynolds sat down, defeated. As Lydia stepped down, She touched the ring on her chain and smiled. Small. Knowing. 2 seconds. In the gallery, Gloria saw it. Her knuckles were white from clasping her hands, but she saw that smile, and fear became hope. Whitmore saw it too. It irritated him. How dare she smile? How dare she act like she had a card to play? He would wipe that smile away soon. The trial continued for 3 more days. Denied motions, sustained objections, hostile rulings. Reynolds looked beaten by closing arguments. The jury convicted on all counts in 3 hours. 2 weeks later, they returned for sentencing. Whitmore had his sentence ready. Life without parole. Maximum penalty. A message to every young activist who challenged the system. But he didn't know Lydia had counted on this. Every insult, every denied motion, every racist comment was part of her plan. The ring wasn't just a ring. It was a transmitter. For 6 months, every word in that courtroom had been recorded and sent to a specific destination. The people listening were not pleased. In 5 minutes, Whitmore's career would end. His reputation was destroyed. His freedom was taken. Because he thought a 17-year-old black girl was powerless. He was about to learn the truth. During her 2 weeks in detention, Lydia wrote constantly in a legal pad. When Gloria visited, she brought hidden items, a hair tie, a book. Once, notes from Lydia's school locker are hidden in a crossword puzzle. "Your brother accessed your cloud backup," Gloria whispered. "Everything is ready." Lydia nodded. "Tell him to send it to the contact I gave you. It's time." Gloria looked terrified. "Baby, are you sure?" "Mama Gloria, trust me. I know what I'm doing." She did. She had prepared for 18 months. Every moment had been documented. Not just by her, by people Whitmore would never suspect. Her mother's ring held more than sentiment. It held power, technology, evidence, the kind that would destroy a judge in minutes. On sentencing morning, Whitmore entered with a spring in his step. He had a golf game that afternoon. This would be quick. Life without parole. His harshest sentence yet. The perfect message. He sat at his bench, arranged his papers, and looked down at Lydia with contempt. She stood in her orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed, face calm. She touched her ring one more time. In the gallery, Gloria sat forward. In Washington, D.C., people in positions of tremendous power picked up phones. In offices across the country, preparations were made. The judge had no idea his world was about to explode. He raised his gavel, ready to pronounce sentence. And that's when everything changed. The night before sentencing, Lydia sat alone in her detention cell. The lights never fully turned off, just dimmed to a sickly yellow that made everything look diseased. She could hear other girls crying in nearby cells. Some called for their mothers, some just sobbed into their thin pillows. Lydia didn't cry. She wrote. The legal pad in front of her was nearly full. Page after page of neat handwriting, diagrams, timelines, legal citations. A sympathetic guard named Officer Carter had slipped it to her 3 days ago with a whispered warning to hide it during inspections. But Lydia's story didn't start in this cell. It started much earlier. 11 years old. That's how old she was when everything changed. She had been living with a foster family, the Hendersons, for 3 years. They were kind enough, but overwhelmed. 4 other foster kids, all with their own trauma, all needing attention the Hendersons couldn't quite provide. Lydia learned early to be quiet, to not ask for much, to make herself small. Then one day, a woman came to visit. Gloria Anderson. She was a nurse, mid-40s, with warm eyes and strong hands that had seen years of hard work. She sat across from 11-year-old Lydia in the social worker's office and said something no one had ever said before. "I knew your mother, and I made her a promise." Lydia's mother had died giving birth to her. That's all she had ever been told. No name, no history, just gone. But Gloria knew more, much more. Marie Johnson had been a federal judge, brilliant, principled, uncompromising in her pursuit of justice. She had met Lawrence Johnson, a rising star in the legal world, during a Supreme Court clerkship. They married, she got pregnant, and then, during childbirth, a rare complication. Internal bleeding the doctors couldn't stop. Marie died holding her daughter for 17 minutes, long enough to make Gloria promise something. "Raise her to understand," Marie had whispered, her life draining away. "Not from privilege, from the truth. Let her see what justice looks like for people who look like us." Lawrence Johnson, shattered by grief, had made a decision that seemed insane to everyone around him. He placed his daughter in foster care under a sealed record. He watched from a distance as she grew up in the system, experiencing the same challenges, the same discrimination, the same systemic failures that millions of black children faced. He told himself it was temporary, just until she was old enough to understand why. But years passed, and when Lydia was 11, going on 12, Gloria convinced him it was time. Not to reveal everything, but to give the girl a chance at something better while still letting her understand the world as it truly was. So Lydia came to live with Gloria, officially adopted, but with sealed records that protected her real identity. Gloria became Mama Gloria, and slowly, carefully, the truth was revealed. Her father was Chief Justice Lawrence Johnson, the highest judicial authority in the United States. But Lydia couldn't tell anyone, not friends, not teachers, no one. "You have to understand something, baby," Gloria had told her on her 12th birthday. "Your daddy could give you everything, private schools, bodyguards, a life of privilege. But that's not what your mama wanted. She wanted you to know what justice means when you don't have power. When you're just another black girl in America, that's the only way you can fix it." So Lydia lived two lives. During the day, she was just another kid at underfunded Roosevelt High School. She got stopped by police for walking while black. She watched friends get suspended for things white students did without consequence. She experienced the same microaggressions, the same systemic racism that shaped the lives of millions. But at night, she studied constitutional law, civil rights history, legal procedure. Her father arranged for professors from Yale and Harvard to tutor her remotely. She read Supreme Court decisions like other kids read novels. She memorized precedents, dissected arguments, learned to think like a lawyer. And at 16, she started her research project, Judge Harrison Whitmore. She pulled public records, analyzed sentencing patterns, documented disparities, created spreadsheets that showed with mathematical precision how racism operated in his courtroom. She interviewed families, collected stories, built a case, not for school, for something bigger. Her father knew. He approved. But he also warned her. "Lydia, if you do this, if you expose yourself to this system, I can't protect you unless your life is in danger. That's the agreement. You chose this path. You have to walk it." "I know, Daddy." "If that judge sentences you, if he hurts you, I will burn his world to the ground, but only if you're truly in danger. Do you understand?" "I understand." Now, sitting in her cell, Lydia understood more than ever. Tomorrow, Judge Whitmore would sentence her to life in prison. He would laugh while doing it. He would reveal exactly who he was. And then her father would keep his promise. Gloria visited one last time that night. She brought a book, supposedly fiction. Inside the pages, a small note. "Everything is ready. The moment he pronounces a sentence, the world will know. We love you. We're so proud of you. This ends tomorrow." Lydia touched her mother's ring, the one Gloria had given her on her 13th birthday. The one with the tiny transmitter embedded inside, recording everything for the past 6 months. Every racist comment, every denied motion, every injustice. all of it sent directly to the Department of Justice. She smiled in the darkness of her cell. Tomorrow, justice would finally come. Morning came with the clang of cell doors and the shuffle of feet. Lydia was escorted to the courtroom in handcuffs and leg shackles. The metal bit into her ankles, but she kept her head up, expression calm. The courtroom was even more packed than before. News crews had set up outside. Word had spread that Maximum Whitmore was about to hand down one of the harshest sentences in county history. Judge Whitmore entered looking refreshed, almost cheerful. He settled into his chair, arranged his papers, and looked out over the courtroom like a king surveying his domain. All rise for sentencing in the matter of the state versus Lydia Johnson. Everyone stood. Gloria sat in the front row, her face a mask of controlled fear. Her hands gripped her purse so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Whitmore didn't waste time. Miss Johnson, you have been found guilty by a jury of your peers on all counts: inciting violence, assault on a police officer, destruction of property, resisting arrest. These are serious crimes that demand serious consequences. He paused, savoring the moment. This court has determined that you represent a clear and present danger to this community. You have shown no remorse, no accountability, no respect for the rule of law. Lydia stood perfectly still. Her fingers touched the ring on her chain. Therefore, it is the judgment of this court that you be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The gallery erupted. Gasps, cries, someone shouted. Gloria's sob cut through the noise, but Whitmore wasn't finished. He leaned back and smiled. That same cruel, satisfied smile from the beginning. You disgust me. Looking at you makes me sick. Life in prison is too good for trash like you. He laughed. Actually laughed. A few people in the gallery, white faces on the right side, chuckled along. The prosecutor looked down, hiding a smirk. Then Whitmore waved his hand dismissively. Bailiff, remove this garbage from my courtroom. The bailiff stepped forward to take Lydia's arm, and that's when she spoke. Your Honor, are you certain? Are you absolutely certain this is the sentence you want to give? Whitmore's face flushed red. I don't need legal advice from a teenage criminal. I just want to make sure you're certain, Lydia said again. Her eyes locked on his. Because you won't be able to take it back. How dare you? Whitmore started. Gloria Anderson stood up. Her voice shook, but the words were clear. Your Honor, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. Whitmore's gavel came down like thunder. Madam, sit down or I will hold you in contempt. You don't have that authority anymore, Gloria said quietly. Not after what you just did. Bailiff, remove that woman! The bailiff hesitated, looking confused. The courtroom had gone silent. Everyone could feel something shifting. And then the phone rang. Not a cell phone. The landline on the court clerk's desk, an old-fashioned ring that cut through the tension like a siren. The clerk, Patricia, picked up. Her face went pale. Her hand started to shake. Your Honor, she stammered. It's for you. Whitmore was still furious. I'm in the middle of sentencing. Tell them to call back. Your Honor, Patricia's voice was barely a whisper. It's the Attorney General of the United States. She says it's urgent. The courtroom went dead silent. Judge Whitmore's face changed. The red flush drained away, replaced by confusion, then fear. The Attorney General? There must be some mistake. She specifically asked for you by name. She said it's regarding the sentencing happening right now. She said it's critical. Whitmore's hand shook as he reached for the phone. For some reason, perhaps because his hand was trembling, he accidentally hit the speakerphone button. A woman's voice filled the courtroom. Strong, authoritative, furious. Judge Harrison Whitmore? Yes, this is Judge Whitmore. I'm sorry, but I'm in the middle of... I know exactly what you're in the middle of. Attorney General Catherine Morrison's voice was ice. I've been listening to it for the past 6 months. Every word, every racist comment, every violation of judicial ethics and constitutional law. Whitmore's face went gray. I don't understand. Let me be very clear. You just sentenced a 17-year-old girl to life in prison. You laughed while doing it. You called her garbage. You used the phrase trash and disgust me. And you did all of this while being recorded by a federal surveillance operation. The judge's mouth opened and closed. The girl you just sentenced, Judge Whitmore, is Lydia Marie Johnson. She is the daughter of Chief Justice Lawrence Johnson of the United States Supreme Court. She has been living under a sealed identity for the past 6 years as part of a federal research initiative into systemic racism in the juvenile justice system. The courtroom exploded. People jumped to their feet. The prosecutor's face went white. Reporters frantically typed on their phones. No, Whitmore whispered. That can't be. It is, Morrison continued. And here's what else is true. The ring Miss Johnson has been wearing contains a microtransmitter that has been sending a live feed to the Department of Justice for 6 months. We have 14 hours of recordings, every denied motion, every racial insult, every violation. Whitmore looked at Lydia. She stood calm, her hand on the ring. She had been wearing the evidence the entire time. Furthermore, we have analyzed 847 cases over 8 years. The statistical evidence of racial bias is overwhelming and incontrovertible. 91% of your defendants are black. Their average sentence is 7.2 years. Your white defendants average 1.4 years for identical crimes. Morrison's voice hardened. As of this moment, you are suspended from the bench pending a full federal investigation into civil rights violations, judicial misconduct, and corruption. FBI agents are en route. They should arrive in approximately 3 minutes. Whitmore sat down hard, his face the color of ash. But I didn't know who she was, he stammered. If I had known... And that's when Lydia spoke, her voice ringing clear across the courtroom. Exactly, Your Honor. You didn't know who I was. So you showed me who you really are. You treated me like trash because you thought I was just another black girl with no power, no connections, no one to protect me. She stepped forward despite the shackles. But here's what you didn't understand. I didn't need my father's name to deserve justice. Every single person you've sentenced in this courtroom deserved the same fairness, the same respect, the same constitutional rights. Tears streamed down Gloria's face, but she was smiling. You asked if I was certain? Lydia continued. I've been certain for 18 months. I've been documenting your racism, your corruption, your complete disregard for justice. I just needed you to show the world who you truly are. She held up the ring. This belonged to my mother, Judge Marie Johnson. She died fighting for justice, and she would be proud of what I've done today. Lydia looked directly at Whitmore. His face was in his hands, shoulders shaking. You laughed when you sentenced me to life. You celebrated destroying a black teenager's future. So now think about the 771 other black children whose lives you've destroyed. Think about the families you've torn apart. She paused. Because they're coming for you now. And I'm going to make sure every single case you touched gets reviewed. In the gallery, people were crying, cheering, embracing. The prosecutor had his head down. The bailiffs stood frozen. The doors opened. 6 FBI agents in dark suits entered, badges displayed. Judge Harrison Whitmore's reign was over. The FBI agents moved through the courtroom like a well-rehearsed unit. The lead agent, a tall woman with sharp eyes, approached the bench with her badge held high. Judge Harrison Whitmore, I'm Special Agent Rebecca Torres. We need you to step down from the bench immediately. Whitmore looked up, his face pale, unable to process what was happening. This is my courtroom. You can't... Sir, you no longer have authority here. Please step down. The Attorney General's voice came through the speakerphone. Judge Whitmore, I'm transferring you now to a video conference. The Chief Justice would like to address the court. A bailiff wheeled in a large monitor. Within seconds, the screen flickered to life. Chief Justice Lawrence Johnson. He sat in his chambers in Washington, D.C., the Supreme Court seal visible behind him. 60 years old with silver hair and dark skin that showed decades spent fighting for justice. His eyes were red, but his jaw was set with determination. The entire courtroom stared in stunned silence. Good morning. My name is Lawrence Johnson. I am the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, and I am the father of Lydia Marie Johnson. People gasped. Some started crying. Lawrence continued, his voice deep and measured. 17 years ago, my wife, Judge Marie Johnson of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, died giving birth to our daughter. In her final moments, she made me promise something. She said, "Let her understand, not from privilege, from the truth. Let her see what justice looks like for people who look like us." He paused, voice thick with emotion. So, I made a decision that many thought was insane. I placed my daughter in foster care under a sealed record. I watched as she grew up experiencing the same challenges, the same discrimination, the same systemic failures that millions of black children face. Whitmore shook his head slowly, trying to deny reality. When Lydia was 11, Gloria Anderson, my late wife's closest friend, adopted her. We maintained sealed records. Lydia lived as an ordinary black teenager. She was stopped by police 7 times for walking while black. She watched friends receive harsher punishments than white classmates for identical infractions. The Chief Justice leaned forward. But Lydia is extraordinary. She inherited her mother's brilliant legal mind. By 14, she was studying constitutional law. By 16, she began documenting systemic racism in the juvenile justice system. And you, Judge Whitmore, became her primary subject. Whitmore made a sound like a wounded animal. My daughter could have revealed her identity at any time. She could have avoided arrest, trial, all of this. But she chose not to, because she wanted to answer one question. Would a black teenager with no power receive justice in an American courtroom? He paused. The answer, as we just witnessed, is no. Lawrence's expression hardened. You sentenced my daughter to life in prison. You laughed. You called her garbage and trash. You said looking at her made you sick, because you believed she was powerless. His voice dropped, cold and final. You were wrong. The Chief Justice looked off camera, then back. My daughter didn't ask me to intervene. She asked me not to. She said, "Dad, if you save me, we prove nothing. But if the system fails me, the whole world will see it fail everyone." His eyes glistened. I agreed, but I told her, if any judge dares to laugh while sentencing you, I will make sure they never laugh again. He stared at Whitmore through the screen. You laughed. Now it's my turn. Lawrence nodded off screen. I am invoking emergency judicial review powers. All of your cases from the past 8 years will be reviewed by a federal panel. Every family affected will have the right to appeal. He continued. Furthermore, I am announcing the Marie Johnson Juvenile Justice Reform Act. This legislation will require all juvenile proceedings to be recorded. Sentencing statistics will be published quarterly by race. Any judge showing statistical bias will face mandatory federal investigation. The courtroom erupted in applause. Lawrence looked at Lydia, voice softening. Lydia, baby girl, I am so proud of you. Your mother would be so proud. You sacrificed everything to prove a point that needed proving. Lydia was crying. I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart. Lawrence turned back to Whitmore. As for you, sir, you will face federal charges. 771 counts. 1 for each black child whose life you destroyed. The screen went dark. Judge Harrison Whitmore put his face in his hands and wept. A new judge entered the courtroom. Judge Patricia Monroe, a black woman in her 50s, called in from the federal appellate court. She carried herself with quiet authority, her expression serious but compassionate. This court is now under federal oversight. I will be presiding over the remainder of these proceedings. Judge Whitmore, you will remain seated in the gallery under FBI supervision. Whitmore was escorted from the bench like a common criminal. He stumbled as he walked. The agents sat him in the front row, handcuffs now on his wrists. The same handcuffs that had been on Lydia minutes ago. Judge Monroe looked at Lydia. Miss Johnson, those restraints are no longer necessary. A bailiff unlocked the handcuffs and leg shackles. Lydia rubbed her wrists, the skin red underneath. Thank you, Your Honor. Monroe nodded. Now, let's discuss what happens next. Special Agent Torres. The FBI agent stood, holding a tablet. Your Honor, we have substantial evidence of discriminatory sentencing. Over 6 months, our investigation documented extensive civil rights violations. Images appeared on the monitor. Graphs, charts, statistical analyses. From 2017 to present, Judge Whitmore presided over 847 juvenile cases. 771 defendants were black. That's 91% of his caseload, despite black residents comprising only 18% of the county. The gallery murmured. Torres continued. Average sentence for black defendants was 7.2 years. For white defendants with identical charges and circumstances, 1.4 years. That's a 500% disparity. Someone in the gallery said, Jesus Christ, loud enough for everyone to hear. We analyzed every variable: crime severity, prior offenses, family circumstances. When controlling for all factors, the racial disparity persists and becomes more pronounced. Torres pulled up another chart. Judge Whitmore interrupted public defenders representing black clients 4.2 times per hearing. For white clients, 0.7 times. He denied evidence motions for black defendants 73% of the time. For white defendants, 19%. More numbers. Each one more damning. Maximum sentences to black defendants, 71%. To white defendants, 12%. Denied bail to black defendants, 89%. To white defendants, 23%. Judge Monroe's expression darkened. Agent Torres, can these disparities be explained by any factor other than racial bias? No, Your Honor. The only consistent variable is race. Torres looked at Whitmore, who sat with his head down. We also obtained financial records. Judge Whitmore received $284,000 from Riverside Private Corrections Corporation over 7 years. Payments were disguised as consulting fees but correlate directly with sentencing patterns. She pulled up an email. This is from Judge Whitmore to the CEO of Riverside Private Corrections, March 2023. Quote, profit-sharing agreement confirmed. I'll keep the pipeline full. The courtroom erupted. People shouted. Order! Judge Monroe's gavel came down hard. The noise subsided, but anger remained thick in the air. Torres displayed another email. This one to a colleague. Quote, these people breed criminals anyway. We're doing society a favor by locking them up young. Gloria covered her mouth, tears streaming. We have 47 similar emails, recorded phone conversations, testimony from 23 families who filed complaints, all dismissed by the board chairman, who is Judge Whitmore's college roommate and golf partner. Judge Monroe looked at Whitmore with disgust. Does the defendant wish to make a statement? Whitmore's attorney, nervous, stood. Your Honor, my client was unaware of the defendant's true identity. If he had known she was the daughter of— Stop! Monroe's voice cut like a blade. That is precisely the problem. Your client treated Miss Johnson with contempt because he believed she was powerless. That reveals exactly who he is. She leaned forward. The question isn't whether he would have acted differently if he knew her father. The question is why he felt entitled to treat any child the way he treated her. The attorney sat down, defeated. Monroe turned to Lydia. Miss Johnson, would you like to address the court? Lydia stood, looking small in her orange jumpsuit, but with a strong voice. Your Honor, I didn't come here for revenge. I came for evidence. For 18 months, I documented Judge Whitmore's courtroom because I needed proof the system was broken. Not opinions. Proof. She gestured to the screens. These numbers represent real people, real families destroyed, 771 children who deserved better. She turned to Whitmore. You sentenced me to life and laughed. You called me garbage. You said looking at me made you sick. Not because of anything I did, because of what you saw when you looked at my skin. Her voice didn't waver. That's who you are, and now everyone knows it. Whitmore wouldn't meet her eyes. Judge Monroe nodded. Thank you, Miss Johnson. This court will take a 30-minute recess while I review the evidence. When we return, I will issue my ruling. The gavel came down. Justice was finally coming. 30 minutes felt like 30 hours. The courtroom buzzed with whispered conversations during the recess. Reporters frantically updated their stories. Family members of other defendants who had been sentenced by Whitmore started arriving, word spreading through the community like wildfire. The gallery filled beyond capacity. People stood along the walls. Others pressed against the doors, trying to hear. When Judge Monroe returned, the bailiff had to call for order 3 times before the room quieted. Monroe sat, adjusted her reading glasses, and looked out over the packed courtroom. Her expression was grave. I have reviewed the evidence presented by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I have examined the statistical analyses. I have read the emails, listened to the recorded conversations, and studied the financial documents. What I have seen represents one of the most egregious violations of judicial ethics and constitutional law I have encountered in my 30 years on the bench. She paused, letting her words settle over the room like snow. The evidence is clear and incontrovertible. Harrison Whitmore did not administer justice. He administered racism disguised as law. He turned his courtroom into a pipeline, funneling black children into a prison system that paid him handsomely for each young life he destroyed. Whitmore's shoulders shook. He was crying, but no one in that courtroom felt sorry for him. Monroe continued. The prosecution in this case was built on lies. Officer Mitchell testified under oath that he saw Miss Johnson throw a brick at 3:42 in the afternoon. But video evidence from multiple sources, including the police department's own security cameras, shows the window was shattered at 3:41. Miss Johnson was in a completely different location, wearing different colored clothing than the actual perpetrator. She looked at the prosecutor, Gerald Stevens, who had gone pale. Mr. Stevens, did you know this evidence existed? Stevens stood slowly. Your Honor, We relied on the officer's testimony. We had no reason to believe. You had every reason to investigate. You had a defendant's phone in evidence that she requested 11 times. You denied every request. That is not zealous prosecution. That is obstruction of justice. Stevens sat down hard. Judge Monroe turned her attention to Lydia. Miss Johnson, please stand. Lydia stood, her hands clasped in front of her. The charges against you are dismissed, all of them, with prejudice, meaning they cannot be refiled. Your record will be expunged completely. This court apologizes for the injustice you have suffered. The gallery erupted in cheers. Gloria sobbed openly, her whole body shaking with relief. People embraced. Some fell to their knees in prayer. Monroe waited for quiet, then continued. More than that, this court recognizes what you have done. You endured arrest, trial, and the threat of life imprisonment to expose a corrupt system. You sacrificed your safety and freedom so that others might receive justice. That is extraordinary courage. She looked at Lydia with something like wonder. You are 17 years old. At an age when most teenagers are worried about college applications and prom dates, you conducted a federal-level investigation into systemic racism. You documented evidence with the precision of a trained lawyer. You had the wisdom to let the system reveal itself rather than trying to fight it with privilege. Lydia's eyes filled with tears. "Your mother would be proud," Monroe said softly. "Judge Marie Johnson spent her life fighting for justice. You have honored her memory in the most powerful way possible." She turned to Whitmore. "Harrison Whitmore, stand." Whitmore struggled to his feet, the handcuffs making it difficult. He looked 20 years older than he had that morning. His face was blotchy, his eyes swollen. "You are hereby stripped of your position as judge, effective immediately. Your law license is suspended pending disbarment proceedings. You will face federal charges including, but not limited to, conspiracy to violate civil rights, honest services fraud, racketeering, and obstruction of justice. 771 counts in total." Monroe's voice was ice. "You will also face state charges for each instance of perjury, evidence tampering, and judicial misconduct. The Attorney General has indicated that your case will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." Whitmore's knees buckled. An FBI agent caught him before he fell. "Furthermore," Monroe continued, "I am ordering an immediate review of every case you have presided over in the past 8 years. A special federal panel will be convened. Every family will have the right to appeal. Every sentence will be examined. And those who were wrongfully convicted will have their records cleared and will be eligible for compensation from the state." She looked out at the gallery, at the faces of families who had waited years for this moment. Justice delayed is justice denied, but today we begin the process of making things right. The cheers were deafening now. People were crying, laughing, holding each other. Monroe's gavel came down one final time. "This court is adjourned." As the FBI agents led Whitmore toward the side door, he passed directly by Lydia. For a moment, their eyes met. He opened his mouth, perhaps to apologize, perhaps to plead, but Lydia's expression stopped him. She wasn't angry. She wasn't triumphant. She was simply done with him. She turned away, and Whitmore was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. The same door he had watched 771 children walk through in shackles. The same humiliation he had inflicted on so many others. Gloria rushed forward and wrapped Lydia in her arms. They stood there, holding each other, both crying too hard to speak. Around them, the courtroom had transformed into something like a celebration. Families were hugging, strangers were shaking hands. Someone started singing, "We Shall Overcome," and others joined in. A reporter pushed through the crowd, microphone extended. "Miss Johnson, how does it feel to be free?" Lydia wiped her eyes and looked directly at the camera. "I was always free. He just didn't know it. None of them did." She smiled, and it was the smile of someone who had just changed the world. "Now let's make sure every child gets the same chance I had. The chance to prove that justice isn't about who your parents are. It's about what's right." The camera flashed. That image would be on the front page of every newspaper in the country by morning. A 17-year-old girl who had beaten the system by exposing it. A teenager who had turned her oppression into revolution. The underdog who was never really an underdog at all. 6 months later, the world looked different. Judge Harrison Whitmore stood in a federal courtroom, this time as the defendant. He wore an orange jumpsuit that hung loose on his frame. Prison had stolen 30 pounds and turned his hair completely gray. The jury took 4 hours to convict him on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 22 years in federal prison. No parole. Whitmore would be 80 years old when released, if he lived that long. He was also ordered to pay $8.4 million in restitution. His pension was revoked. His reputation was destroyed. His name would forever mean judicial racism. In prison, other inmates knew exactly who he was, a judge who sold children for profit. He spent most of his time in protective custody, isolated and alone. Meanwhile, the 771 cases were being reviewed. 412 had been overturned. 89 young people were released immediately, their records cleared. Marcus Wilson, sentenced to 12 years for stealing a $40 hoodie, was now studying computer science at community college. Keisha Thompson, sentenced to 8 years for self-defense against sexual assault, was working as a social worker helping survivors. Jamal Harris, sentenced to 15 years for half a gram of marijuana, had opened a business teaching coding to underserved kids. Each credited Lydia with giving them their lives back. Riverside Private Corrections Corporation filed for bankruptcy after a federal investigation revealed systematic bribery. The CEO was arrested. The prison pipeline was finally broken. And Lydia? She was 18 now, sitting in a lecture hall at Yale Law School, the youngest student in her class, but far from the least experienced. Her book, Behind the Bench, A Teenager's Fight for Justice, became a #1 bestseller. She donated all proceeds to the Justice Documented Foundation, a nonprofit teaching young people investigative skills and legal advocacy. The foundation now operated in 50 cities, over 2,000 teenagers trained. Together, they had exposed 12 more corrupt judges and helped overturn hundreds of wrongful convictions. Lydia received the Presidential Medal of Freedom at 18, the youngest recipient in history. She spoke at the United Nations, testified before Congress. Her TED Talk was viewed 40 million times, but her favorite work was the simplest. Once a month, she visited the Marie Johnson Justice Center, the renamed Riverside Courthouse. She met with teenagers facing charges, taught them their rights, showed them how to document everything. One afternoon, a 15-year-old Latina girl asked, "Miss Johnson, what if we don't have a famous dad to save us?" Lydia smiled. "I didn't win because of my dad's name. I won because I had evidence, courage, and refused to be silent. You have something more powerful. You have each other. You have the truth. You have a whole generation ready to fight. I was one girl. Now we're a movement, and they can't stop us all." She stood outside the courthouse afterward, wearing her mother's ring on a chain. A reporter asked how it felt to be back. "It feels like coming home, not to relive what happened, but to make sure it never happens to anyone else." The underdog who changed everything.